New British Promotions Live podcast. My name's Gareth Goldthorpe. We've obviously already had Mikey Andrews on the show. We had Johnny Storm last week. Judging by the look of the face when I mentioned Mikey's name, this guy's got a lot to say. So I would like to welcome to the podcast Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, how are you?
I am doing very well. You're lucky to have me tonight. It's been an interesting night for me. I've had a lot going on, but I am still making time to do this call because I do have a lot to say, like you said, and we will get onto that person in due course.
We of course appreciate it, Mr. Lee.
Yes.
We of course appreciate it.
Yes, it is definitely your honour to have me on again.
That it is. So, it's a tradition we start at the beginning. Tell me about how you got into wrestling. Were you a wrestling fan growing up? Where did you discover training? Where did you train? That sort of thing. Tell me some stories about how you broke into wrestling.
Oh God, well, Jesus. Very similar to what Johnny said actually the other day. I'm old enough just to vaguely remember the World of Sport at the very end of it. I can remember watching it, Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks with my nan. She was really, really into it. She was one of the actual grannies that went to the shows with the handbag and would attack people. So from a very, very early age, I was exposed to that style of pro wrestling. Obviously it's a different world back then. I mean, like we've said in private conversations, the ratings that they got there, I mean, we would kill to get them kind of numbers. It was just an absolutely amazing period for British wrestling, which we know we'll never get back to. But what's happening at the minute is very positive, and wrestling is a way bigger thing in this country now.
Yeah, definitely. I think, going back to that, I think that once the secret of the business got out, I think that was the end of World of Sport, wasn't it? Because the people who watched it in those days did see it as a legitimate sport, didn't they? I think that's...
It was, yes. It was completely different era. They actually believe what's going on, even though when we watch it back now, we look at it and we're thinking, oh my God, this is just terrible. But yeah, they thought it was real. And when it started to realise what it actually was, it sort of took it off of, because you couldn't really put it on World of Sport at that could you? Because it just didn't work anymore, and obviously there were other factors involved in it. But yeah, it was not good.
No, definitely not. So obviously you're in the back end of the World of Sport. Where did you train? Because I understand you are a wrestler. We just know you as a manager here at One British Promotions, but New British Promotions, sorry. So, where did you train? How long do you wrestle for? Where do you wrestle?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, a lot of people are just thinking of me as a manager, but I've been around for a very long time. I started out as a wrestler my first match was in 1999. So my in-ring career has now spanned 4 decades. Wrestled in the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, the 2020s. It's just that at the minute, New British Promotions have been seeing me using my mouth more than my arm bars and suplexes, but that is going to be changing a little bit soon. But we'll come on to that. In a bit. So,
yeah. So you trained down in Amerloch? Obviously, I do my research.
I did, yes. Similar story to what Johnny said actually when you talked to him, Johnny Storm. Back in them days, it was very, very hard to find somewhere to train. Hammerlock School in Kent was pretty much the only place outside of like All Star where you could go. And All Star, you had to have the right people, the secret handshake, just take a beating and maybe they'll let you on a show at some point. Whereas Hammerlock, they were actually running a real wrestling school. It was actually a summer camp that I started on, so it was a week long thing where people who, to be fair, nobody had any wrestling experience on that show and that camp. We were all sort of all newbies, just going along wanting to see what it's about. And we went down to an old, I don't know, it was like an old scout hut or something with a ring in the middle of it. We spent a week down there, and yeah, it just went from there really. I did a couple of them. Name dropping, I'll drop some names on that. The first camp that I started on, also the guy starting there on his first day was a guy called Johnny Moss, who is now one of the trainers at NXT. So started out in good company.
Yeah, that is good company to be in, definitely. So where did you make your ring debut? Did you do it through Hammerlock, or was that later on?
My actual real debut was through Hammerlock. I think it was the third summer camp that I'd done. Hammerlock had a show at the end of it at Winter Gardens in Margate. I believe that was 1999, the year that was. And they had said that any of the guys who'd been on the course who'd pick things up and were showing promise, we could actually go along to that show, and they would stick us in a rumble, which is how I think a lot of people have got their starts in British wrestling over the years. So yeah, I was in a Royal Rumble match in front of, I think there were about 400 people there. It was a decent sized crowd, and I was in there for all of like 1 minute 15 seconds, I believe.
Right, okay, so you go in through Bushwhacker Luke standard there. But not bad, it's not bad at all.
It's not bad. To be fair, I've actually done worse like 10 years later, so I'm not too bothered about that one. It's not my quickest time in a rumble.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, take us through some of the names that were in the rumble with you. Is there any notable names?
There were some very notable names. Yeah. I'll never forget it. It was my debut, and it's a big night for me. But yeah, I came out number 14 in that rumble, and was it? No, I was number 15. Number 14 was Doug Williams, who, massive name, everybody's heard of him. He's been all over the world, and that was when he was just coming up. And then just after me is a name that a lot of people don't remember. This guy called Gary Steele, and he was the big Hammerlock star at the time. He was getting a big push at that time. And he went on from that push to become the first British NWA champion, the actual real NWA before it became TNA. So that was a big names to be involved with at that time.
Yeah, definitely. That is pretty impressive. So you go on from there. So these are just summer camps.
They were, yes.
I presume you got into like full-time trading at some point. Where did you find that? Was it up here, or did you?
It moved closer here. I mean, it was fantastic for me. The last summer camp I was on, there was sort of chatter about Hammerlock setting up more training schools in different parts of the country. I think the only one that ever did sort of launch was up in Sheffield. It's the 393 Club, which so many people who've gone through British wrestling in the last 10 years, 15 years actually, will have heard of that place. They'll have probably passed through and met some of the guys who have come through there. And that became a weekly training thing. Johnny Moss started out doing the training there, along with the guy who pretty much I owe most of my training to, is a guy called Alan Johnson, who he lived in Sheffield, so that's why he got the job doing the main training there. And I had some fantastic matches with him actually. We used to battle over the jumping forward a bit there actually. Yeah, so I started training with what was NWA Hammerlock Sheffield at the time. Didn't last long as Hammerlock. They had a bit of a falling out over whatever people fall about in wrestling, money, promotion, whatever like that. So they set the school up then independently, and they rebranded it as Elite Pro Wrestling. So we were elite before elite was cool. We always say that, and we start. Yeah.
Yeah, the name Elite was thrown around quite a bit, wasn't it, before it became.
It was, yes, really. Quite a few elite promotions actually in the UK. All stem from that same Sheffield thing. They all, I think, the one later on took the name Elite as sort of a tribute to where they all came from. But yeah, so we set up the training camp there with that 3 times weekly training with lots of different guys doing lots of different things, and started to promote our own shows. I think the first show that we did for them, we actually did it in Hillsborough Park in Sheffield. We just took the ring, set it up in the park, and just put on a show. We had like a little tent at the side to get changed in, and there were people who were watching the tug of war and going on the rides and things. They were just coming up and sitting and watching those guys who, to be fair, at that time, none of us really knew what we were doing, but we were doing it and enjoying it, and it gave us, everybody has to start somewhere.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. So take us through some of the promotions you've worked for and some of the notable opponents that you've had.
Well, this is what I always tell people, is I'm sort of one of the guys in British wrestling that nobody's ever heard of. I own that. I've been everywhere, I've worked all over the place, but nobody ever knows me. But I'm the guy who's on the shows that people remember. So it's not a massive list of big names, but I have been around. I've, like I said, Hammerlock, Elite Pro Wrestling, New Elite, I can never remember their name. EBW they were called. They were one that Mark Impact, Andy Hogg, and Mikey Riot set up. Some guys that I was really good friends with over the years. I've also wrestled for and trained with 1PW back when they did their original academy. I sort of trained with them as they were doing the underground shows and stuff before they sort of went out of business the first time round. Obviously they're back now and they're doing some good stuff as well again, but they've sort of been around for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. I was in the academy and myself, but I was when they'd gone to the Granby the second time round. So
yeah, when they moved it to the pub, yeah.
Yeah, that were an interesting place. Seeing Abyss wrestling there was one of my all-time favourites because they booked the Dome for the show.
Yes,
We all being cancelled. And we ended up all having to move the show to the Granby. And there were about 500 people in the Granby, and there were Sterling James Keenan against Abyss. I was like, never are we going to see anything like this again. It was amazing.
Yeah, they got some big names over there. Did some big shows. It just we'll not go into sort of a lot of people know about Steve's history and issues, so we'll not bring that up here. But yeah, when he was on form and doing stuff, it was very impressive what he was getting done.
Yeah. And no, it's great that they are back. But yeah, definitely some interesting memories going back to those underground days.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks like we just missed each other there, buddy.
Yeah, I think I'd just come back to Sheffield at that point. I came away from Sheffield. I was getting a bit disillusioned with things, and it was getting there was a lot of stuff going on there. So I took a little break away from them, and then. The 1PW Academy, it was Keith Myatt was doing the training there, who was an absolute legend. He really got me back into it, and then by the time I'd finished there, 393 Club was then being run by Blondie Barrett, Bob Barrett, he was a big star in the world of sport days. He did the training there and started to run his shows under the Rebel Pro Wrestling banner. I did a lot of work for them. Again, it's a lot of it out of that building, but we also toured around all over the place. We did all sorts of things. We had some really good times working them shows for EPW, RBW. There was a lot of great guys, a lot of memories.
Brilliant. No, so New British Promotions.
Yes.
How did you get started? We're jumping forward, but let's get on to the bit where we that pays the bills. So New British Promotions. Yes. Where do we? How did you get involved? Was it always going to be a regular thing? Was it an accident? Go through that.
Well, I just saw that New British Promotions were promoting a show in Barnsley, and as I do when I see anybody promoting a show in Barnsley, I just tend to drop them a message and say, do you need any extra guys? Can I come along and do anything on the show? Because I was just starting to push the gimmick that I do now with the Barnsley wrestling title. So anytime there's a show in Barnsley, I'll go along and I'll defend it. I'll run away from people. I'll turn up in the crowd and just cut a promo on somebody just as the local champion. And turned out that the guy running the show, he had worked with me, I think 10 years previously on another show, and he remembered me from a Rumble that we'd done. And
all right.
So again, it's just who you know and when you know people sometimes. But yeah,
right person.
Yeah, it is. He said, "Well, we booked up for wrestling, but I remember you being a bit of a mouthy bugger. So if you could come along and sort of manage some people, that would be great. Because we're running a tournament to crown the champion, and if you could come and help get some guys over, that would be really, really great." So I went along there, and totally different experience for me. To be fair, I'd not really done much managing at that point. I was still wanting to wrestle more, but obviously, sometimes things just click. They sent me out there to talk, and it just worked. It was a great show, great crowd. In fact, it was a crowd that asked me there to talk. So I was coming out I had all this stuff planned, what I was going to say and stuff. And then when the tech guys got there, it turned out the only mic they had was a earpiece mic that the ring announcer could wear. So I had to get in the ring and just make myself heard without a microphone or anything. So my voice was so sore after that. So I was like literally shouting all night long. But loads of fun, loads of great guys backstage. There's a lot of talent going on there. And then pretty quickly, I obviously leave a show. I had a great time. If you need me to do anything else, give me a shout and I'll happily come back. And sort of within a couple couple of days actually, I'd been messaged back saying, "Yeah, can you come to these next shows? We've got a few ideas that we want to do. We would like you to do more talking, but we are putting together this. We're trying to put together a group of guys, and we think you would be the perfect fit to manage them all and look after them in sort of a Four Horsemen NWO kind of thing, with me being the mouthpiece for them."
Aye, okay, so that would be what we know as now as Project Mayhem.
That is indeed Project Mayhem, yes.
And the original incarnation of Project Mayhem had a certain guy called Mikey Andrews in. Is that correct?
The original, yes, we did. We all make mistakes. Mikey was working a few shows for MBW, and they were doing the title tournament. A couple of our guys were in that tournament, and we had some bad luck. Tommy Drucker just kept managing to get by our guys, and we noticed there was someone injured in the tournament, and we took the opportunity to recruit Mikey and have him fill that spot for us, which obviously he didn't win that, but he came really close to it, and it did seem like he was going to be a pretty good fit for us. I mean, we've all seen what Mikey looks like. He's a powerhouse. He's not the tallest guy in the world, but he's wider than he's tall, and he's very impressive in the ring. But like he mentioned when you were talking to him, he's not that good at following orders or towing the line or doing what other people want him to do. And that became pretty evident to us. He had some falling out with other guys in the group, and that sort of culminated in Wakefield. He was in a tag match with Gunnarsson, and things didn't quite go his way, so he wasn't being very cooperative, and he got distracted and lost that match for us. And he didn't want to own that, and that led to a little bit of pushing around, and then he made a huge mistake of laying his hands on me. I was managing and ring announcing on that particular show, and when I saw that Gunnarsson, who is, I'm sure you've seen Gunnarsson, he's a very, very big, strong guy, he's probably twice the size of Mikey. It was a bit of pushing match going on, and I did not want Mikey to get his head ripped off, so I jumped in the ring to try and help things out, and Mikey attacked me, and then from that moment on, we were finished with him. We took the opportunity later in the night to, I'll say it, we screwed Mikey. Mikey came out, it was a Royal Rumble match to end the night. We all came out as a group, and when we gave the signal, Mikey was excommunicated and removed from that match, and removed from Project Mayhem completely.
Right, okay, so that brings us to the 28th of July, where you'll be stepping into Mikey's home village of Woodhouse. 3/4 of the crowd, he says, is going to be his family and friends. It's not going to be a nice environment for you. How do you stand a chance here, Mr. Lee? I mean that with all due respect.
Well, it's not the first time I've walked into a hostile environment, and it's also not the first time that Mikey's mouth has gotten him into trouble. And this is going to come back to the interview which you did with him a few weeks ago. So,
yeah.
In that interview, did Mikey say that he could beat Mr. Lee with one hand tied behind his back?
I knew that. I did try to, yeah. Now, I don't think he meant that.
He did say that, didn't he? He did say that he could beat me with one hand tied behind his back. And did he or did he not challenge me to a match where he would have one hand tied behind his back?
He did, yes.
He did, yes. And that is now public record that he made that challenge. So, Mikey, I hope you're listening to this. You thought you were clever by getting the management to book a one-on-one match between me and you in your hometown. Well, I can play that game as well. I have that footage. I showed that footage. And what I now have is some rope. So, Mikey, you are now the one who is going to put your money where your mouth is and prove that your mouth is writing checks that your ass can't cash. You are going to be wrestling me on the 28th with one hand tied behind your back.
Right, okay, so that's official.
That is official. That is what's going to happen, and that is Mikey trying to be clever and run his mouth.
Right, okay, so it'll be interesting to get some comments from Mikey, which I'll try and get over the next few days. See how he feels about that. So, yes, on the 28th of July in Woodhouse, it will be Mr. Lee against Mikey Andrews, and Mikey will have his one arm tied behind his back. Okay, so... You did say, or mention to me off air, that you had an exclusive. Is that the exclusive that you were going to give me? I presume that it was.
That is not the exclusive. There is a little bit more to come, but before we get there, we have more to talk about on that show. That is not the only thing that I'm involved in that show. On that show, also, Project Mayhem's leader, Dante Durden, is challenging for the title. So he is fighting Tommy Rocker on that show for the MBW Championship. So
yes, he is.
He is.
Yes.
So going to be a double celebration for Project Mayhem on that night.
Can't write off Tommy. I mean, he ain't going to have his hand tied behind his back.
That is true. Tommy has been a little bit of an issue for Project Mayhem. We have tried to do everything we can to get that title off of him. We threw pretty much everything at him in the finals of that title tournament, and he did get through us. He is a very, very good champion, but he is not Dante Durden, and Dante is on an absolute roll at the minute, and he has got an incredibly good chance of walking out of Sheffield on the 28th with that title.
Well, I did mention when I was speaking to Mikey that I don't know if the Project Mayhem thing might be a bit of a distraction for Dante Durden, in the fact that I think Dante could be getting this sort of thing done on his own. And would you be tempted, because we all know that Project Mayhem are known for interfering in each other's matches, if you just allow it to be? On the 28th of July, Tommy Rocker against Dante Durden one-on-one. See who the better man is.
We always start out doing that. It just so happens that occasionally when I'm around, referees just become unconscious for no reason, or kendo sticks happen to be in the ring. It's not always my fault. Sometimes Mikey Andrews has been known to get involved where he's not wanted either. So sometimes me being there and Great Schwal being there to keep an eye on things is a necessary part of what goes on. And like we have said, when you deal with Project Mayhem, you don't just deal with one of us, you deal with all of us.
I think that answers my question.
Well, it does for now, but I do believe coming up in October, there is a King of Yorkshire tournament where some Project Mayhem, where Dante is taking part, and I do believe that the rest of Project Mayhem have been barred from the building.
Well, as the guy running that show, I would like to give you an exclusive. I've made the decision that not all of Project Mayhem are going to be barred from the building, because the third of the four members going into that tournament will be Gunnarsson.
That's very interesting.
Yes, which means Dante and Gunnarsson are going to have to face in that tournament.
Okay, that is something we need to discuss as a group. As I've said, Dante is the leader of Project Mayhem. Come that time, there is an incredibly high possibility that Dante will also be the champion coming into that match. Gunnarsson is a very big man. He is also a team player. There are discussions to be had there. But we will have to see how that goes. I also believe one of Mikey's comments about that show was he didn't believe Mr. Lee would stay out of that, and I think he was saying that I should be handcuffed to somebody at the time.
He did say that.
I think he was trying to get me handcuffed, I don't know, handcuffed to a ring announcer, handcuffed to a fan, handcuffed to God knows what. I think he's just into the kinky handcuff stuff, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll have to review the shows leading into that as to whether that becomes a thing. But yeah,
Yeah.
That's two of your guys in the tournament now. But like I say, they will have to face off.
Yes, we will see how that goes. That should just... well, all that proves, to be fair, is that Project Mayhem are the top stars of New British Promotions. So 2 of our guys are in that tournament to become King of Yorkshire. We've got 2 chances to do that. I believe the tournament is based on points, not necessarily wins. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to go out there and try and kill each other. There could be some scope for us having a plan on that one, but we'll get to that in October. We've got lots to do before we get there.
Yeah. Well, like I say, we'll have to see how it goes, but we obviously need to protect the integrity of the tournament as well. So we've got to make sure that all matches are competitive on the night, and so that will take place on the 8th of October in Swillington at Swillington Miners Welfare. We've got a few shows to come before then, so literally anything can happen.
Anything can and is happening, which brings me to another piece of business, and this is something that I've been told I can announce tonight, which hasn't necessarily been told before. As part of some legal wheelings and dealings that I have been having in relation to the way that maybe I've been mistreated by the New British Promotions management team, and certain threats of legal action for myself being put in harm when I was trying to do other things apart from wrestling, I have struck a deal with the New British Promotions Old School brand, where I am going to be the commissioner there. So as of the 28th of August, any shows under the Old School banner, Mr. Lee is going to have full control over those shows in a commissioner style general manager role.
So that's on the 28th of August at Ariel's.
That's where it begins, yes, and going forwards. So maybe that role will expand out to other brands under the New British Promotions banner. So come the 8th of October, there may be even more power given to Project Mayhem in the... As you know, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that goes on, and now Mr. Lee is going to be a lot more involved and have a lot more power on that one, shall we say.
Great news for yourself on the Old School brand. I am very doubtful that it will expand over to the brand that I'm involved with. You are absolutely a valuable talent. You will be there as a manager. But no, I can't see that expanding over to our brand. But I do congratulate you on your new position, Mr. Lee.
We shall see what the management... As people know, there's a lot of stuff that goes on backstage management-wise, and... yeah, you never know. It's a long time till October.
It certainly is. It certainly is.
And if we happen to be controlling the title at that time as well, then that could be interesting for everybody.
Anything could happen. Literally anything could happen.
Anything could happen.
Mr. Lee, it's been an absolute honour and a privilege. Thank you for taking your time. But as we've mentioned, we have got some shows coming up. We've got the 28th of July, which will take place in Woodhouse. As we've mentioned, tickets are available through the New British Promotions Facebook page.
They are, and I believe that one is selling very quickly, so I don't think there's many tickets left for that. So
not much left at all for that one, definitely not. And then we're back at Rye Hill on the 25th of August. And then we're starting the Elite era on the 28th of August.
Yeah, and the 5th of August, I think we need to mention what the who's on that show. That we've got a big match on that show, which is going to be Johnny Storm and Paul Malin, I believe, which is...
that's going to be huge.
That is an amazing match to be on. I think... Hands up that Project Mayhem are not going to be headlining that show. That show is going to be stolen by Johnny Storm and Paul Malin. If you've never seen these guys, you need to go over there and see that show.
Definitely. I mean, Johnny Storm touched on that last week.
Yep.
just how much he's looking forward to being in the ring with him and how long it's been. So yeah, it's that one's going to be an absolute belter, and we cannot wait for that on the 25th of August. And again, just get your tickets while you can, because as soon as it gets common knowledge that that match is taking place, then we're not going to have many left for that one either. Then we've got the Project Mayhem era, or the Mr. Lee era, starting on the 28th in Earls. And then we go over to the King of Yorkshire on the 8th of October, where 2 of the 3 participants so far are part of Mr. Lee's Project Mayhem. The other one, interestingly, is Mikey Andrews.
Well, if Mike is still around at that point, because come the 28th, Mikey might not want to show his face again after I humiliate him in his own house.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Well, we'll have to see what happens. Even with one hand tied behind his back, Mikey is a pretty impressive guy. So we'll see where things go. We'll see what happens. But no, Mr. Lee, thank you very much for your time this evening. I'm sure you will be back on the podcast. You've always got an opinion or two to share, and now you're being part of the management team. That just makes it even more likely that you're going to be back with us. But no, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
You're very welcome, and it is always your pleasure to speak to me, and I shall definitely be back very soon. See ya.
Thank you very much for listening, guys. Bye-bye.